Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're digging into the absolutely wild history and the frankly stark modern reality of the bird that literally built our modern food system. We see them every single day, right? In supermarkets, at restaurants, everywhere. But the story of how this specific bird went from a highly revered, ancient, sacred symbol to a heavily engineered industrial commodity, well, it's one of the most incredible and honestly kind of unsettling journeys in human history. To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of this topic, I want you to think about this number for a second. 33 billion. That is the estimated number of chickens living on Earth right at this very moment. Think about that the next time you're wandering down the poultry aisle. They are the most abundant bird on the planet by an absolute landslide. They vastly outnumber us, and they live in pretty much every corner of the globe. That completely skews our planet's population, doesn't it? I mean, we've got about 8.8 billion humans sharing the Earth with 33 billion chickens. But here's the crazy part. That 33 million is just a snapshot in time. According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, the turnover in the agricultural industry is so incredibly fast that we actually slaughter somewhere around 55 billion of them every single year. So how on earth did we get to this massive industrial scale? We've got to look backward. To see how this all builds, we have to trace a timeline going way, way back. Because this bird's journey from ancient civilizations to your dinner plate is just wild. We're going to follow this path starting from the Indus Valley around 2000 BC, moving through ancient Egypt and Rome, all the way to medieval Europe. And spoiler alert here, for the vast majority of human history, we weren't even eating them. Yeah, the biggest takeaway here is the actual reason we first brought these birds into our lives. Early humans didn't breed chickens for food. They domesticated them for the pure aggression of roosters in the ring. Cockfighting is literally one of the oldest continuous sports in the world, originating in the Indus Valley, which is modern-day Pakistan and Afghanistan, around 2000 BC. It was that fierce fighting spirit, definitely not their meat or eggs, that first caught our attention. As they started spreading globally from there, chickens weren't looked at as dinner. They were divine beings. They were completely revered across entirely different ancient cultures. To the Zoroastrians, the rooster wasn't breakfast. It was this powerful symbol of light fighting against the darkness. In Norse mythology, they were tied to healing. Over in Japan, they were linked to the sun goddess Amaterasu. Even in early Christianity, Pope Nicholas I actually ordered the figure of a rooster to be placed on church weather vanes in the 9th century. They were genuinely sacred. And get this, they were even trusted military advisors. There's this famous, albeit totally disastrous, Roman military anecdote that perfectly captures how highly they were regarded. The Romans used sacred chickens as oracles before going into battle. If the chickens greedily ate their grain, boom, good omen. But before a huge naval battle against Carthage, a Roman general offered food to his sacred chickens, and they flat out refused to eat. Furious, the general actually tossed them into the sea, shouting, "If they won't eat, let them drink." Well, he ignored the chickens, went to battle anyway, and his fleet was completely destroyed. You just don't mess with the sacred chickens. But human ingenuity with these birds started really early. The ancient Egyptians actually cracked the code on artificial incubation way, way before modern technology came along. They built these massive mud brick ovens with incredibly precise temperature control systems to mass-produce chicks, entirely skipping the need for a mother hen to sit on the eggs. It was a huge technological leap for the time, and honestly, a very early hint at exactly how humans would eventually engineer the bird's entire lifestyle. The real game changer for eating chickens, though, happened in Europe around 1000 AD. Basically, strict religious dietary laws enforced by powerful monks required them to fast from eating the meat of four-legged animals. But poultry and eggs? Those became the ultimate loophole, the permitted protein. This sudden massive demand sparked rapid artificial selection. We bred them so fast that it permanently altered the chicken's TSHR gene. That's the biological switch controlling reproduction, and it turned them from seasonal layers into docile, year-round egg-laying machines. Then came the age of discovery, and chickens turned out to be the absolute perfect shipmates for long ocean voyages. Think about it. They are practically immune to seasickness. If they somehow get loose on the deck, they can't really fly away, and they definitely can't swim away. Plus, they offer a constant, renewable source of protein through both meat and eggs. That made them essential cargo, allowing them to hitch a ride alongside European colonists and spread to every single corner of the globe.
Now, this global historical migration also gave birth to some incredibly iconic culinary staples. Southern fried chicken, for example, actually traces its roots back to enslaved West Africans in the American South, specifically in places like Georgia. Because chickens were often the only livestock enslaved people were even permitted to keep, they drew upon their own rich culinary traditions, originally frying the bird in palm oil.
Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the chicken briefly morphed into a symbol of extreme wealth and status. Right before we fully industrialized them, the Victorian era saw this massive craze known as hen fever. In the 1840s, Queen Victoria became completely obsessed with breeding exotic, incredibly fluffy Cochin chickens brought over from China. Suddenly, chickens were treated as highly prized exotic pets. The elite were trading them for massive sums of money just for their extravagant, fluffy looks. Literally, the Victorian elite were treating chickens the way people treat designer handbags today.
But okay, fast forward to after World War II and everything changes drastically. During the war, rationing meant red meat was sent off to the soldiers, which quickly made chicken the staple in American households. To meet this crazy new demand, the US launched a nationwide contest in 1948 called the Chicken of Tomorrow. The goal was to use science and genetics to engineer a massive, rapidly growing super chicken. And, well, they succeeded. This directly created the modern broiler chicken we know today.
And this is where the story takes a pretty dark turn. There's a truly stark contrast between a bird living naturally and the heavily genetically modified chicken of tomorrow we consume today. A chicken living in normal, natural conditions can easily live for about 3 years. But the modern industrial broiler chicken, engineered for maximum meat in minimum time, has a lifespan of just 45 days.
Let that number really sink in. 45 days. A modern broiler chicken is slaughtered at just a month and a half old. That chicken breast sitting in your grocery store cart, it likely came from a bird that was basically still a baby. Why? Because we have engineered them to grow so incredibly fast and to carry so much heavy breast meat that their internal organs, specifically their hearts and lungs, simply cannot physically support their unnaturally massive bodies for much longer than that. Now, for the hens kept for their eggs, the reality is just as brutal. When an egg-laying hen's natural production starts to slow down, the industry often relies on a highly controversial practice called forced molting to squeeze out maximum profits. According to the source material, they systematically deprive the hens of food and water. This intense starvation throws the bird's body into a state of severe physical shock, which artificially triggers a forced, frantic new cycle of egg-laying.
And what about the male chicks born into this egg-laying industry? Well, because they can't produce eggs, and because they aren't the specific genetic breed engineered to grow super fast for meat, they are economically useless. Consequently, billions, yes, billions, of male chicks are viewed strictly as industrial byproducts. The very moment they hatch and are sorted, they are instantly destroyed, often using carbon monoxide gas. For the broilers that do survive to enter the system, their living conditions are, frankly, unimaginable. Try to picture this number: 30,000. That's the average number of chickens currently crammed into a single 4,000 square meter warehouse on a standard factory farm. They spend their short, 45-day lives standing shoulder to shoulder under harsh artificial light, without ever seeing the sun or stepping foot on actual grass. And because of that intense shoulder-to-shoulder crowding, we see severe physical ailments, like hawk burns. These are intensely painful skin conditions and chemical burns on the bird's legs and chests. They are caused simply by the chickens being forced to sit in highly concentrated ammonia emanating from their own accumulated waste on the warehouse floor. These densely packed, toxic living conditions not only cause severe physical suffering, but they create the absolute perfect breeding ground for deadly, highly contagious diseases. Which brings us to the absolute biggest, most alarming red flag of all. We've taken a sacred, resilient, ancient bird and engineered it into billions of identical, genetically vulnerable units. Since billions of these birds share the exact same heavily modified genetics and live in highly contagious, crowded environments, I want to leave you with this final haunting question. What happens to our global food supply if a disease wipes them out tomorrow? It is a very stark reminder of the incredibly fragile foundation upon which our entire modern food system rests.